The mahogany conference table at Morris & Associates law firm had never felt more like an execution block. My Uncle Robert's perfectly manicured hands slid the inheritance papers across its polished surface, his signet ring catching the light like a warning signal. "Sign it, Sarah," he said, voice dripping with false concern. "It's what's best for everyone." I looked around the room at the faces of my father's family. Uncle Robert, the self-appointed patriarch since Dad's death 2 years ago. Aunt Patricia, his wife, wearing enough diamonds to blind someone. My cousins Marcus and Victoria, both trying to hide their smirks behind expressions of fake sympathy. Only Grandma's seat remained empty. They'd made sure she was too ill to attend this meeting. The papers in front of me were simple enough. A complete renunciation of my inheritance rights to the Bradford family holdings, the company my grandfather had built from nothing 50 years ago, the company my father had helped expand before his accident, the company that, by all rights, should have been split between me and my cousins. We can't have someone so inexperienced handling such crucial decisions, Uncle Robert continued, adjusting his Rolex. The board agrees. The company needs strong, traditional leadership. Traditional, their favorite code word for male. I glanced down at my simple black dress, bought off the rack at a department store. They'd always hated how I refused to play their games of designer labels and country club memberships. Even now, Victoria's Channel perfume seemed to be waging war with my drugstore brand. "The terms are more than generous," Marcus added, his MBA-polished voice carrying across the table. $5 million in exchange for your shares. That's more than fair considering your limited business experience. Limited business experience. I almost smiled at that. They'd been so busy watching their own reflections in their marble floors, they hadn't bothered to check what I'd been doing for the past 2 years since Dad died. "And if I don't sign?" I asked quietly, though I already knew the answer. Aunt Patricia's surgically enhanced smile tightened. "Then things could get very uncomfortable. The board has already expressed concerns about your father's unfortunate investment decisions before his death. A full audit might be necessary." There it was, the threat. They'd drag Dad's name through the mud, create enough doubt to tie everything up in legal battles until I was bankrupted by lawyer fees. What they didn't know was that 6 months ago, I'd sat in Grandma Alina's garden, drinking her special blend of Earl Grey tea, as she explained exactly what she'd done. "They think I'm getting senile," she'd said, her blue eyes sharp as ever. "Let them. While they're busy planning how to steal your inheritance, I've already transferred controlling interest in the holding company to you through offshore accounts they don't even know exist." I picked up the Mont Blanc pen they provided, probably expecting the expensive weight of it to intimidate me. My signature flowed across the page, each letter a step in a dance they didn't know I was leading. "There," Uncle Robert said, unable to hide his triumph. "That wasn't so hard, was it? Security will escort you out. Don't bother coming to any future family functions." I stood, smoothing my dress. "Actually, I have a lunch appointment. But you all might want to keep your phones on this afternoon. I hear there's going to be some interesting business news." Victoria rolled her eyes, still playing at being mysterious, "Cousin. This isn't one of your little charity projects." I walked to the door, then turned back. "You know what Dad used to say about the Bradford family motto? Fortune favors the prepared." I always wondered if any of you actually understood what that meant. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to my lawyer. "Execute Phase 1. In the lobby, I passed the massive portrait of my grandfather, the company's founder. Most people saw an intimidating figure in an expensive suit, but I remembered him teaching me chess when I was 7. The key, my dear, he'd said, isn't just knowing the moves. It's making your opponent think they know yours. I stepped out into the bright autumn sunshine, counting down the minutes. By 2 p.m., every news outlet in the city would be running the story. Bradford Holdings' secret merger with its biggest competitor, orchestrated by the company's true majority shareholder, me. Uncle Robert's carefully arranged monopoly on the family's shipping empire was about to crash into the rocks, and he didn't even see the lighthouse. My phone buzzed. A message from Grandma. Is it done? Just beginning, I replied. Heading to the hospital now. Are you ready for visitors? Darling, I've been ready since your grandfather left me his secret shares 20 years ago. Today we show them what Bradford women can really do. I smiled, hailing a cab. The driver asked, Where to, miss? Mount Sinai Hospital, I said. I need to visit my grandmother before the afternoon news cycle hits. As we pulled away from the curb, I watched Uncle Robert's precious law firm recede in the background. He'd spent so much time building his glass castle, he never noticed who actually owned the ground beneath it. The real inheritance wasn't in those papers I'd signed. It was in the lessons Grandma and Grandpa had taught me while everyone else was busy counting their money. Patience, strategy, and the understanding that true power doesn't need to shout to be heard. My phone buzzed again, this time an alert from my real office, the one nobody in the family knew about. Markets opening. Ready to proceed with announcement? I typed back a single word. Begin. By sunset, the Bradford family would learn what their precious motto really meant. Fortune doesn't favor the bold. It favors those who know how to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Grandma Aliner's private hospital room felt more like a command center than a place of recovery. She sat propped up against crisp white pillows, her silver hair perfectly styled, multiple tablets arranged on her bedside table like battle plans. Did they bite? She asked as I walked in, her eyes gleaming with the same strategic sparkle that had built Bradford Holdings 50 years ago. Hook, line, and sinker, I replied, setting my bag down. Uncle Robert practically danced when I signed. She checked her watch. A vintage Cartier that Grandpa had given her on their 40th anniversary. It's 1:45. Markets close at 4. Are you ready for what comes next? I pulled out my laptop, already in motion. Johnson & Pierce are announcing the merger at 2 p.m. sharp. Their PR team has been coordinating with ours for weeks. And Robert has no idea. He's too busy celebrating his victory to notice that his biggest competitor just merged with the company he thinks he controls. I smiled, remembering Uncle Robert's smug face. The offshore transfers? Completed last night, Grandma said, pulling up documents on one of her tablets. Your grandfather always knew Robert would try something like this after he was gone. That's why he left me controlling interest in the shadow companies, the same ones that just became majority shareholders in Johnson & Pierce. I logged into my secure email, checking the final confirmations. Everything was proceeding exactly as we planned over the past 2 years. While Uncle Robert and his children had been busy playing corporate royalty, Grandma and I had been quietly consolidating power to a web of holdings so complex it had taken 3 international law firms to structure. My phone buzzed. A panicked text from Victoria. Turn on CNBC now. It's starting. I told Grandma, switching on the hospital room's television. The business news anchor's voice filled the room. Breaking news in the shipping industry as Johnson & Pierce announces a surprise merger with Bradford Holdings through a complex series of offshore acquisitions. The deal, valued at over $4.2 billion, effectively consolidates control of the East Coast shipping corridors. Grandma turned up the volume as the anchor continued. In an unexpected twist, the merger appears to have been orchestrated by Sarah Bradford, granddaughter of founder William Bradford, through a previously unknown holding company. My phone exploded with notifications, calls from Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia, Marcus, Victoria, board members, family friends, everyone who had sat silently by while they tried to push me out of my inheritance. Should I answer? I asked Grandma. She shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. Let them sweat. They'll all be here soon enough. Robert never could handle being outplayed. Sure enough, within 20 minutes, the door burst open. Uncle Robert stormed in, face red, his perfect suit slightly disheveled. Behind him, Aunt Patricia and my cousins huddled like a Greek chorus of designer outrage. What have you done? He demanded, waving his phone where the stock ticker showed Bradford Holdings shares soaring on merger news. I looked up calmly from my laptop. I believe the press release explains everything quite clearly. Bradford Holdings is merging with Johnson & Pierce. The combined company will be the largest shipping consortium on the East Coast. This is impossible, Marcus sputtered. You signed away your shares. No, I corrected. I signed away my direct shares in Bradford Holdings, but Grandma's offshore companies, the ones that actually control the voting rights, those weren't mentioned in your carefully worded document. Victoria stepped forward, her designer heels clicking on the hospital floor. You can't do this. The board will never approve. The board already has. Grandma interrupted, her voice cutting through the room like steel. Check your phones. The vote was completed 10 minutes ago. Sarah's holding company now controls 57% of the merged entity. Uncle Robert turned to her, realization dawning. You helped her do this? While pretending to be sick. Pretending? Grandma laughed. Robert, I've been running this company from hospital rooms for 2 years. Your father taught me everything about this business long before you were born. Did you really think I'd let you steal it from his granddaughter? But the company needs strong leadership, Aunt Patricia protested. Traditional values. Traditional values? I stood up. Like loyalty? Honor? Taking care of family? Because from where I stand, you all abandoned those values the moment you thought you could profit from my father's death. I pulled up another document on my laptop and turned it to face them. This is a list of every questionable decision you've made since taking control of the board. Every inflated contract given to your friends, every nepotistic hire, every manipulated audit. Did you really think nobody was watching? Uncle Robert's face went from red to white. You're bluffing. Try me. I met his gaze steadily. Test whether I'm willing to launch a full investigation into the board's activities over the past 2 years. See how the shareholders react to that kind of scrutiny. The room fell silent except for the continuing market updates from the television. Bradford Holdings stock had jumped another 12% on the merger news. What do you want? Uncle Robert finally asked, his voice hollow. I closed my laptop. The same thing I've always wanted. What Dad worked for, what Grandpa built. A company run with integrity, not ego. You all have a choice to make. Work with me to build something better, or cash out now and walk away. Marcus laughed bitterly. You expect us to work for you? After this? No, I replied. I expect you to work with me. Or find another industry to work in. Your choice. Grandma pressed a button on her bed, calling a nurse. I think that's enough excitement for one day. Sarah, dear, would you mind having security escort them out? I believe they have some decisions to make. As they were led from the room, Uncle Robert turned back one last time. You planned this all along, every step. No, Uncle Robert. You planned this when you decided I wasn't worthy of my inheritance. I just decided to prove you wrong. After they left, Grandma reached for my hand. Your grandfather would be proud. Not just of what you did, but how you did it. I squeezed her hand gently. We're not finished yet. No, she agreed, picking up one of her tablets. Now comes the hard part. Actually running the company we just saved. My phone buzzed again. A message from our PR team. Press conference requested for tomorrow morning. How do you want to handle it? I looked at Grandma, who nodded encouragingly. Tell them the new CEO of Bradford Johnson Shipping will be making a full statement at 9 a.m., I replied. And make sure Uncle Robert's old office is cleared out by then. I have some redecorating to do. Outside the hospital window, the sun was setting over the city skyline. Somewhere in those gleaming towers, my father's family was realizing that they'd just been outmaneuvered by the very person they'd underestimated all along. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy, and proving that sometimes the best way to honor a family's heritage is to fight for it, even against your own blood. The morning of the press conference, I stood in my father's old office, now my office, adjusting my mother's vintage Rolex. Not a flashy piece like Uncle Robert's, but a quiet statement of elegance that told its own story. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see 3 cargo ships bearing the Bradford Johnson logo entering the harbor. The merger was already physically visible in the water. Ms. Bradford? My new assistant, Thomas, appeared at the door. They're ready for you in the conference room. And your family is here. I nodded, unsurprised. All of them? Yes, even the ones who weren't invited. Perfect. I checked my reflection in the window. The tailored navy suit I wore was expensive, but understated, chosen to send a message. I wasn't here to play their games of conspicuous wealth. I was here to work. The main conference room fell silent as I entered. On one side sat the board members and major shareholders, including several Johnson and Pierce executives. On the other, my family, Uncle Robert, Aunt Patricia, Marcus, and Victoria, all looking like they'd aged years overnight. But the seat that drew everyone's attention was at the head of the table, where Grandma Aliner sat in her wheelchair, perfectly poised in channel, her eyes bright with triumph. Good morning, I said, taking my place at the podium. Thank you all for coming. Before we begin the press conference, I'd like to address some internal matters. I opened a folder and laid out several documents. These are the results of a preliminary audit of Bradford Holdings' operations over the past 2 years. The findings are concerning. Uncle Robert shifted in his seat. Marcus suddenly became very interested in his phone. However, I continued, I believe in family and in second chances. So I'm offering a choice. I pulled out another set of papers. Option 1. Sign these new contracts. They include revised compensation packages, strict oversight requirements, and ethics clauses. You can maintain your positions within the merged company under new leadership and accountability standards. And option 2? Victoria asked, her voice barely hiding its tremor. Option 2 is simpler. Sign these resignation letters. Accept your severance packages and walk away. No investigations, no public revelations about the creative accounting I've discovered. Uncle Robert stood up, His face flushed. This is blackmail. No. Grandma spoke up from her seat. This is mercy. Something you didn't show when you tried to steal her inheritance. The company needed, he began. The company needed exactly what it's getting. I cut in. Fresh perspective, ethical leadership, and a return to the values Grandpa built it on. I checked my watch. You have 5 minutes to decide. The press is waiting. Those 5 minutes felt like hours. I watched my family huddle together, whispering furiously, occasionally glancing at the documents I'd laid out. Finally, Uncle Robert approached the podium. "We'll sign the new contracts," he said stiffly. "But this isn't over." I smiled. "Actually, it is, because those contracts include non-compete clauses and mandatory cooperation with our ongoing audit. One misstep, one attempt to undermine this transition, and option 2 becomes your only choice." One by one they signed. Even Marcus, who'd spent years telling anyone who'd listen that women couldn't handle complex business decisions, scrawled his name with shaking hands. As they finished, Thomas appeared again. "Press is ready, Ms. Bradford." I turned to the board members. "Shall we?" The press conference went exactly as planned. The markets responded enthusiastically to the merger announcement, and my prepared statement about modernizing while honoring tradition hit all the right notes. But it was the question and answer session that really drove everything home. "Ms. Bradford," a reporter called out, "your uncle was quoted last week saying you lacked the experience to handle complex business decisions. Your response?" I looked directly at Uncle Robert in the audience. "I think today's merger proves that experience comes in many forms. Sometimes the best business education comes from watching others' mistakes." Later that afternoon, I sat with Grandma in what had once been Grandpa's private study. The wood-paneled walls still held photos of ships from the company's early days, back when one man's vision had started it all. "He would have loved this," Grandma said, sipping her tea. "Not just the merger, but how you handled it, with grace and strategy." "I learned from the best," I replied. "You and Grandpa played the long game all along, didn't you?" She smiled. "William knew Robert would try to take over eventually. That's why he left me the controlling interests in those offshore companies. We spent years setting up the framework that you finally used." "But why not stop Uncle Robert sooner?" "Because you needed to prove yourself. Not to us. We always knew what you were capable of. But to yourself." She set down her cup. "Besides, watching Robert dig his own grave while thinking he was building a throne was rather entertaining." A knock at the door interrupted us. Thomas entered with a stack of papers. "Final merger documents are ready for your signature. And there's someone here to see you." Behind him stood Victoria, looking uncomfortable in last season's Prada. "Can we talk?" I nodded to Thomas, who closed the door behind him. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, playing with her bracelet, "about what you said regarding family and second chances. And I was wrong. We all were. The way we treated you after Uncle James died, the things we said." She took a deep breath. "I'd like to learn. Really learn, not just play at being an executive." I studied her for a moment. "You understand you'll start at the bottom? No special treatment, no shortcuts?" "Yes." She managed a small smile. "I hear the shipping logistics department is a good place to learn the business from the ground up." "Monday, 8 a.m., I said. "Don't be late." "And Victoria? Leave the Prada at home. Cargo ships are messy places." After she left, Grandma chuckled. You're giving her a chance? Like you gave me one. I picked up the final merger documents. Besides, someone once told me that true strength isn't about crushing your opponents. It's about knowing when to help them stand back up. That evening, as the sun set over the harbor, I stood at my office window watching our ships move through the water. Each one carried not just cargo, but a legacy of my grandfather's vision, my father's integrity, my grandmother's wisdom, and now, my own determination to prove that the greatest inheritance isn't what's given to you, but what you prove you deserve. My phone buzzed with a text from Uncle Robert. You won. Congratulations. I typed back. No, Uncle Robert. The company won. The family won. And maybe, if you're willing to learn, you did too. Then I turned back to my desk, where a new set of challenges waited. Because while winning was satisfying, leading was the real test, and I had a legacy to build, one decision at a time. On my desk sat a chess piece, the queen from the set Grandpa had used to teach me strategy all those years ago. Beside it lay my old employee ID from when I'd worked summers in the shipping yard during college, learning the business from the ground up while my cousins lounged on yachts. Each piece told part of the story that had led to this moment, but the real story was just beginning. Because running a company isn't about who has the most power. It's about who knows best how to use it. And I had learned from the best.